Hello and welcome to my progress presentation. I'm going to discuss with you today the progress I have made in between the research submission and now. Here is an overview of what I'll be covering within this presentation. The first thing I did was update my research objectives to make sure they were focused on my project. I took on board the comments I was given in the feedback from my research proposal, where it was stated my objectives were too broad and did not align with my research question. Had I have stuck with my original objectives, I do believe it would have had a negative impact on the progression of my project. Although these objectives were in relation to children's literature and sustainability, they were not specific enough to the question to allow me to progress with the project. Therefore, I reviewed my research question and came up with new objectives that outline what I need to do to develop my understanding for children's literature and sustainability for fashion. This will allow me to collect relevant data to produce my final outcome whilst staying focused on the aim of the project. The next step was to pin down my target audience. Within my research proposal, it was clear the project was aimed at children, specifically primary school children. However, primary school children range from 4 to 11 years old, and the problem with having this as a target audience is that it would be extremely challenging, if not impossible, to make a piece of literature that is understood by each of those ages. This is due to a number of reasons which I developed an understanding for through visual analysis in my methodology. The writing style, imagery and concept of the story is all dependent on the age of the child. I thought about which ages within the primary school bracket would benefit most from learning about sustainability, and by doing so are more likely to go on inhabiting sustainability into everyday life. This decision was made easier when I reviewed the interviews I'd carried out with experts in the fashion industry and a children's author. The 3 individuals I spoke to all suggested that sustainability is a concept children need to learn about as soon as they possibly can. I carried out secondary research using the gov.uk website 2020 on the different key stages and the curriculum for each one. This provided me with an understanding of how the key stages are divided and what each key stage is expected to learn during that time. This data collectively helped me establish who my target audience is, and I can now confidently say that this is Key Stage 1 children aged between 5 and 7. I've chosen this audience because, as Mazzarella suggests on this slide, children of these ages are still forming their values and learning habits, which is arguably the ideal time to introduce sustainability to them. Children need to learn that from the earliest possible age the ways they can wear and enjoy fashion without harming the planet. Once I had established who my target audience is, I carried out further visual analysis on children's books made for the same audience. I made sure the analysis was more detailed by focusing on aspects of the book that I need to consider for my outcome. This includes text, visuals, layout, design, etc. I looked at children's books in the category of sustainability, which helped me develop an understanding of how previous authors have addressed the concept through the above elements. 10 Things I Can Do to Help My World by Melanie Walsh was the first book I looked at. You'll see there is a heavy use of bright, typically primary colours used consistently. On the cover, the author uses a straightforward title with illustrations that highlight the topic of the book, for example the light bulb and the butterflies. I paid close attention to how authors had written their stories, as I knew I was going to have to adapt a writing style for an audience I have no experience writing for. This book had a really easy to follow text and layout. Each section is introduced using the start of a sentence followed by the ellipsis symbol, for example, I always ... or I remember ... On the adjacent page there is an illustration that relates to the topic the narrator is addressing. So here you will see that they're talking about littering and there's a picture of the bin and rubbish around it. This page is fun for the reader as it is shaped as the object. You'll see in the bottom image the left hand page was cut into the shape of the bin. When you turn over, the reader will find the end of the sentence, and on the following page there is a tip still written using very basic language that relates to that topic, informing the reader on how doing this action can help the world. This text is also written using a layout encouraging interaction, so the readers are encouraged to either turn the book or to turn their head to read it. So as an example, when they're discussing turning off the tap when they're not using the water, it's written in the style of water coming out of the tap, which is really nice. This is another example from my visual analysis, and it's on the book called The Adventure of a Plastic Bottle by Alison Inches. The front cover also features an easy to understand title and an eye-catching striped background made up of primary colours again. The story is written in the format of a diary and in the perspective of the plastic bottle. It is set out in small paragraphs and is broken up into different diary entries. The text has an upbeat, excited tone to it, keeping the reader engaged in the story. Just like the previous book, helpful and informative tips on recycling can be found throughout the book, and with this book there's even a glossary in the back so readers can look up words. Unfortunately, there was no interactive element, which I felt let the book down slightly, just because I think through my research I have established that readers really need something to keep them engaged and keep their focus on the book, because they're so hyperactive at that age and just want to be doing things, that you really need something that will keep them engaged in the book, especially if the text is a little bit more lengthy like this one is. So to summarise this section of the presentation, I have developed my understanding of children's books, and specifically for the Key Stage 1 audience, in terms of writing style, design and reader engagement. At the end of my research proposal, I hadn't come to a final decision on what area of sustainable fashion I was focusing on to educate children on the matter. I was previously toying with the idea of experimentation, such as biofabrication, and had looked at Suzanne Lee in particular. I used the following books to look into this and other routes I could go down regarding sustainable fashion. Sandy Black's Eco Chic, The Fashion Paradox, proved particularly helpful in allowing me to reach this decision. There was lots of resources inside on sustainable fashion, but the one that appealed to me most was upcycling. Using this, I gathered data including more about the process, facts and statistics, and designers and brands who use this method. Some of these I will go into further detail on later on in the presentation. Bradley Quinn's Fashion Futures was slightly more focused on fashion and technology. However, I was able to collect data on resale and recycle, page 182. This was really informative and helped me develop my understanding on how the different countries are attempting to tackle the problem of waste clothing going to landfill. For example, Country Road, a high street shop in Australia and New Zealand, have teamed up with the Red Cross to encourage consumers to donate clothing rather than throw it away. They've done this by setting up an incentive, so the consumer that comes in, if they have an item of clothing that is actually from Country Road, they'll receive a voucher to spend in store, which I thought was a really nice thing, because as well as knowing that you're doing a good thing for the planet, they're also being rewarded for this, which will hopefully encourage them to keep coming back and keep donating rather than just throwing it away. After I decided on upcycling as the focus of my book, I knew I'd have to learn more about the process and the terminology to do with it. So this is how I came across the Sustainable Fashion Glossary from Condé Nast, partnered with the Centre of Sustainable Fashion. This is an online resource with over 250 terms that addresses all 4 pillars of sustainability. According to Condé Nast 2020, the glossary was set up as a reference tool to help usher in a new era of understanding of fashion based on a respect for and valuing of the earth and all who live within it. This glossary has educated me on the terminology surrounding sustainable fashion, which is vital for my project. It will allow me to write a book on the topic and in turn educate children using these key terms. This has also encouraged me to create a glossary within my book that breaks down any language I use within the story that they are unsure of. To do this, I'm going to pick out terms relevant to the area of sustainable fashion I'm looking at, focusing on, and simplify them where possible, just so that it's a bit more clear to that target audience. This slide summarises the information I have gathered on sustainable fashion and how this has helped me progress with the project so far. Following on from the research I collected from these books, I've taken inspiration from the following 2 clothing brands that I discovered in Sandy Black's Eco Chic text. First up is Junkie Styling. The brand was set up by 2 designers who wanted to make some unique pieces to go clubbing in. They then started selling these one-off fashion pieces on a market stall in Brick Lane, which eventually expanded into a shop. Junkie Styling's signature piece is a pinstripes men's suit, which they rework into many different designs, using the cuffs and collars as bold statement pieces on each of the reworked designs. This brand has since stopped producing clothing under that name, but here are some examples from one of the designers' websites. Next up is the Charity Trade and its clothing store's Trade Remade. Trade have over 900 clothing banks across the country, and they use a clever upcycling approach to divert 3,000 tonnes of clothing from landfill every year. Trade provides a young designer volunteers with bags of second-hand clothing that they rework. Once they've reworked the clothing goes back into the shops, and the profit that they make in the store goes back into funding other projects. So it's a really nice kind of cycle that is educating people that are buying from the store, the designers that are to do with it, and everyone else that hears about this. I've also taken inspiration from events that have taken place during the period of lockdown. The aim of this project started off as making a positive change through sustainability to our environment. However, I've been inspired by current events to use my outcome as a platform to make a positive change to societal issues, such as the Black Lives Matter movement. This has inspired me to think about the characters within my story and representing diversity through my book, which I'll explain later on. So I've really developed the types of characters that I want to use, and I just really want to show that represent all kinds of people within my book, not just one. Using social media, I put out an advertisement for an illustrator to assist with my final major project. The following day, luckily, a graduate reached out to me and provided me with a link to her portfolio, which you'll see some examples from on the right-hand side of the slide. Ruby Blue has graduated from a games design undergraduate course and collaborated with a number of people, including the Wessex Scene publication. Her experience and the diversity in her work appealed to me greatly. After I'd seen her portfolio, I contacted her to explain more about my project to see if this was something that she would like to be a part of. Unfortunately, she really loves the idea, and sustainability is something she is equally as passionate about. The following week, we had a phone call to introduce ourselves a bit better and discuss the project in a bit more depth. And I feel this really worked well, as we were able to share ideas and visualise them much easier than over message, where it might come across a little bit blunt and you can't really express what you're thinking. I now feel like we've built a working relationship that will allow us to progress with the project much more smoothly. During the call, I explained to Ruby that I wanted to use this platform to not only make a positive change in sustainability, but to societal issues that have come to the surface over lockdown, such as the Black Lives Matter movement. When we discussed the characters for my book, I explained that I would really like for the main character to be of black ethnicity to show support to the movement. She was enthusiastic about this idea and showed me some previous sketches she had done, creating a character similar to what I was describing. I really liked the sketches, however I provided Ruby with images of the style of illustration I'm interested in using for my book. She is now working on combining her and my ideas into a style of illustration suited to my specifications. And I should have these designs within the next few days. Over this period, I haven't really progressed with the design of my book as much as I would have liked to. However, I have since decided that there will be two main characters, and that is a little girl and a ragdoll, who the little girl is really keen to upcycle clothing for. After deciding that this is what I wanted, I started thinking of innovative ways that we could get the reader involved with the story and really immerse them into the process of upcycling. So I thought about having a cardboard insert of the same ragdoll that's in the story at the front of the book, so that readers can cut or pull this out and they can try out upcycling for themselves at home. So the process would be a lot easier for them, because they probably wouldn't be sewing or anything like this, but they can get materials that are no longer needed and just cut around them, and then they can simply glue them on. So it's still, although it's not exactly what the little girl might be doing in the story, it's really similar and kind of gives them just a feel of like what it's like to upcycle. And I think it should get them really excited in the story. And like I said, this is going to be at the front of the book after the cover, so that readers can see it straight away and hopefully will be excited to work out what it is. I'm still working on other interactive elements for the book to get the readers involved and understanding the process of upcycling as best as they can, and this is within my next steps for this project. Although it's likely that my book will now be digital, I looked at printing companies for if it was to develop into print copies. Online, I came across a really useful printing company called Book Printing UK. This company provided me with a free instant quote tool to work out the cost of printing from my book based on the requirements. It was really quick, really easy. The quote was sent directly to me via email and worked out to about £110 for 2 copies, which I didn't think was too bad. I struggled filling out some of the sections just because I have a lack of knowledge on, I've never made a book before, and it's some areas just wasn't really clear, like paper stocks. But the website was really helpful and made suggestions. In some areas it said really good for children's books, so I chose that option. So I was able to choose the best option for the time being. Using this website, I was able to request a sample book featuring different paper types, fonts, paper stocks, etc. These are images taken from the sample book, actually featuring a children's story, which allowed me to visualise what my book could look like had I gone with this company. Using this sample book, I've been able to select the best option for my book. Going forwards, I'll be able to get a more accurate quote as I now have a better understanding of my requirements for if I was to get it printed. So I've taken this opportunity to also consider what comes next. So once my outcome is finished, what is the following steps? So by this I mean how I'll get my book seen by my target audience and others. During my interview with Francesco Mazzarella, he discussed with me how he had participated in educational projects with young people surrounding sustainability and sustainable fashion. His project Gen Green involved him going to schools and running workshops on sustainability. During the workshop, children were provided with a number of sources, including videos, worksheets, discussions, and an activity that required children to get creative with denim jackets. So I'd really like to do something similar to this with my project, and I feel that perhaps going into schools and introduce my book through a discussion on sustainability and giving them a brief overview of what sustainable fashion actually is, they'll understand the idea behind the project better and hopefully will be a bit more involved and encouraged to join in. So it will also make readers aware that there is a category of books available to them on sustainability should they want to develop their understanding further, which is obviously what we hope that they do. At the end of the workshop, I thought about providing children with a voucher for if they choose to buy my book, or even a free paper copy to take home to show parents, so that it's also getting people at home involved. I'm also going to contact a number of publishers to see if they would be interested in publishing my book for me, which would help me in reaching a wider audience. So over the duration of this project, I've faced several challenges. The first of these was deciding on the area of sustainable fashion I would focus on. As I previously stated, I was more interested in the experimentation side of things, as I feel it was really innovative and under-researched. However, I didn't feel that this was a topic I could communicate across to children and do it justice, nor did I think that children at home could actually get involved with it and try out, which is what I really wanted with this project. So I decided on upcycling, but finding this balance of innovative and what a reader of my target audience will understand was a really challenging part of this project, and did take a little while. Secondly, I had difficulty with collecting data for and from my target audience. I was able to speak to my brothers and sisters who are aged between 8 and 12, so just slightly outside of the bracket that I'm writing for, but just to gain a bit of knowledge on sustainability and children's literature. However, within this discussion, I found I had a tendency to help them with their answers when I saw them struggling with the question. This was really unhelpful because whilst it meant that they reached an answer, it is an answer that has been influenced by me and therefore not 100% reliable or what they're thinking. If I go back, I do need to go back to my target audience. So when I do this, I'm going to avoid intervening when they're trying to respond to the question, just to make sure I'm getting an accurate and reliable response. My last and biggest challenge so far has been adapting a new writing style to suit my target audience. So I have no experience working with or writing for, and this has meant that I've had to learn a new skill. However, visual analysis has helped me develop a feel for the type of tone used to address 5 to 7-year-old readers. In addition, once I've started making the book, I'll be going back to my target audience to test out elements such as text, visuals, etc. to get feedback so it's suited to this age group. So here's the vision for my project. I've established short and long-term goals for the book. So I'm now just going to round up the data that I've presented to you through my conclusion. So I've collected further research on sustainable fashion. I've established exactly who my target audience is, decided on upcycling as the area of sustainable fashion that I'm going to explore within my book. I've managed to find an illustrator who has begun mocking up characters. My illustrator, and I've also developed an understanding of the writing style for Key Stage 1 children. So in the next few days or weeks as the project progresses, I've just outlined some of the things that I need to do and that are going to take me forwards so that we can get close to finishing the project. So thank you for listening. Goodbye.